I'm very comfortable asking the uncomfortable questions and challenging the norms. That's just who I am because I want to push things forward. And underneath every title I've ever held, I'm someone who now refuses to let fear choose my future.
Hello and welcome to the Encourager Podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebecca Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Hello, Encouragers. On this week's podcast, I've got our frequent guest with a new subject that I think is really relevant for what I have too been experiencing in the last year, especially as Nick and I have taken on the young adult ministry at church. And I shouldn't say like taking on this whole thing, but we host the young adults in our home, which is kind of the college group. And I'm learning so much about this generation. First of all, you got to really know your Bible because with the young adults that are in our group, they know their Bibles so well. So it's caused me to just really dig in deeper. So there's nothing wrong with that. But also, I'm just learning so much. And as Ellie Saxer, our guest today, gets to talk with us, she was talking about how one of her keynotes that she's given a couple times for student honor society or whatever it is identity crisis. And it's been my experience. So tell me, Ellie, if this is your experience as well, is that it kind of used to be for the last couple of years that a coin phrase was being authentic.
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
Being authentic is super important to me. And I find the older I get, the less margin I have for people who aren't, because I'm just like, nope, skip to the chase, which is not fair and not very kind or giving of me. But I do think that there's something going on with people not understanding their own identity. And what you said that triggered this whole episode was that influencers play a part in it. And I was like, wait, what? Tell me more. And so you did. So talk to us a little bit about what you have been discovering with identity crisis, both for our age and then also for the young adults and where they are getting their identities.
Yeah, no, there's tons of studies and stats and figures. So we could be talking about this for a long time. But this was actually something that came up in my own life journey. I sat down across from a counselor and she said, well, tell me about who you are. And I remember thinking, well, I'm a mom and this is my career and this is where I'm from. And she's like, great, that told me nothing about you. I was like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, those are roles that you have, but it's nothing about who you were created to be. She said, do you even know where your favorite place is to eat? Do you know what you want to do in the future? What are your dreams? And I'm like, oh, and it really put me on a hard spot because I could name my favorite place to eat for my kid. I could tell you what dreams I have for them, but I was really disconnected with who I was created to be, which I believe every generation struggles with. Our generation, especially as women, we start connecting ourselves with pouring into our kids and our spouses and our work. But then she started talking about the identity crisis that really exists for kind of the younger generations. And it's amplified by the fact that our generation can't really help them out of the ditch. Yeah. So it kind of started that way. And then I interview people almost every week or I'm preparing them for interviews. And the question that I've always instinctively asked is, so tell me about yourself. And it was the same answer I gave that counselor. Like, I'm from here. I went to school there. I have experience doing this. And I remember now looking back going, well, that told me absolutely nothing about the person I wanted to hire. I don't know what motivates them. I don't know what their passions are, what sparks them. I don't know anything really about them that sets them apart from everybody else that's going to come through the door. And that's got what I started to dig into. So this identity crisis is for all ages. We all experience it. But what amplifies it now is we're becoming so disconnected with who we are. Instead, we're starting to follow and become who somebody else is. We buy into what they're doing. We buy into their beliefs. And then there's tons of studies, which we can talk about, is especially the younger generation, but we're not a lot better at it, is we can no longer decipher between reality and what's on social media, what's been generated, what's been paid to be that way. So if we're starting to build our identity, especially these young folks, who are building their identity on an influencer, and that influencer doesn't even know who they are because they're getting paid to be somebody. That's not an extremely great plan for a success in life. So that's kind of where all this has been spurring and coming from. And there's just so much to be aware of in terms of mental health, relational and emotional dialogue and connection with others that stem from this.
I do want to know some of those stats because I think it just backs up how you got there. But first of all, I would say this, Ellie, you know that I always encourage the encouragers that in the first 10 minutes of listening to the podcast, that there's something that you can implement. And so the first thing I would encourage you to implement after listening to this is asking yourself the simple question, like Ellie's counselor asked her, who are you? And outside of your roles, which we love our roles, I coach and talk about them all the time, right? But like, let's dial it in for yourself. Would you add anything to that question, Ellie?
No, and it's not something you can just answer overnight. At least it wasn't for me.
Okay.
You definitely have to take some time and explore. And it's you're going to have stages that all of a sudden something becomes aware to you, and you connect with it. Like we talked about our comfort zone exercises, and that was a big part of it. Like I needed to figure out my emotional regulation and how that created like who I was, maybe what I was afraid of, what I retreated from because I was afraid of it or I wasn't comfortable. So that tells you a lot about yourself. It gives you that confidence, but also style. Like I had help figuring out my style, but the more that I connect with my style, the more I just feel free and confident. There's a lot of different parts that, yeah, if someone asks me where I want to eat, I know how to connect with, well, here's my favorite place or here's what I feel like right now. It's just finding your voice sometimes. And I started to allow myself to dream. So if you would have asked me several years ago, what are your dreams? I don't know. I didn't really allow myself to dream for myself. I did it for others. And it's being intentional in prayer about, God, I want to dream. I want to see the beauty that you may have for my life, and not just dream it, but then start making steps towards it confidently because of who you created me to be.
Absolutely. Okay. So it can't be done in the first 10 minutes, but you can write the question down and you can reflect on it over the next month. And I think too, we kind of romanticize the first couple of months of the year, you know, where we feel like it's a slowdown. It's a very good time to reflect. I think that we should get better at wintering, just being still. And so this would be a great question to just kind of explore. What are your dreams? What are you outside of your roles? Okay. Tell us a little bit more about those stats, Ellie.
Absolutely. So there was a study done by Psychology Today, and they found that 75% of all teens, so they involved 12 to 19, so kind of preteen even, across the world, so not just here in U.S. because social media is everywhere, 75% of them feel pressure to appear perfect. And when I read that, I'm like, appear, so that must be on social media, like they need to appear perfect, like we see everyone else. But when you dig into it, it's actually they feel the pressure to feel perfect in their real life. That's where this stress and this anxiety and this burden that they're carrying, because they think everyone's perfect. That's what they see online, so therefore they need to be. And it doesn't just affect them. I think we all are that way. So it's like asking somebody at church, how are you? And they get the smile like, I'm good. But, you know, deep down, like that's not the reality, but that's how everyone is just appearing to be perfect. And so this perfection is causing the increase in loneliness and anxiety. The other statistic is half of individuals that are on social media say that by the time they get off, so whether it's 15 minutes or 3 hours, whatever it might be, half of them feel a distinct feeling of separation and loneliness. So the more that they doom scroll, the more lonely we feel. And you know, like where the devil wants to play with loneliness is you're not worthy, you're not needed. And that's where we get into some pretty terrible things in the mental health arena. Some of the other things that I was definitely not aware of is that U.S. teens, so again, that same study, and then the American Psychological Association looked at it and verified that they were true. The average 12 to 19-year-olds spend nearly 5 hours a day on social media. 5 hours. And it might be a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's the average is 5 hours. Gen Alpha, we know right now, they were born online. Like that's just whether it was because they were doing online school during COVID or what it is, but they never got them off. So 40% of Gen Alpha kids have a tablet by age 2, 60% by age 4, and 1 in 4 of that Gen Alpha have a personal cell phone by the age of 8. And then our 13-year-olds right now so they're kind of the oldest edge of this Gen Alpha. 4 in 10 of them report feeling lonely sometimes in a 4-day period, and that they worry about anxiety and they worry what people think about them. And that's not what we have seen. So when you look 2 generations before current Gen Alpha, that sense of loneliness or worried what others think was much less prevalent. So we've given essentially this entire generation like a mirror and a microphone before they even finish middle school, and they don't even know who they are. Those are pretty striking. When you look at the older generation, so you look at us as adults, 74% of us in the U.S. can't tell what's real or fake online anymore.
Oh, jeez. I believe it. I believe it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They actually then, the US and UK brought 2,000 people in. It's called I Prove. It's a deep fake study. And only 0.1% of people could correctly identify deep fake versus real images.
Wow.
Right? So that pressure of feeling I need to be perfect and I need to look like they do, I need to do what they do. Well, they're not even doing that.
No wonder we are struggling with identity and insecurities and then let alone our own poor children. I have exactly a 13-year-old. Wow.
Yeah. So I think about like if you're 13 or 14 and you're still just trying to figure out who you are. I mean, let's be honest. So, but then everything you see is filtered, curated,
Yep.
AI generated. Of course, your sense of identity is going to be shaky. You don't rely on the who was I uniquely created to be, because we're all unique. We have quirks. We don't look like everybody. We have things that we're comparing. But rather than owning that, we're trying to figure out how to filter that out because that's not what everyone else likes or sees or should be.
Fun fact, I own the federal trademark for the phrase own who you are. This was long before I knew that it would be just really important actually right now. So, Ellie, when you're talking to teenagers in particular, and we can definitely talk about our age as well, what is your suggestion to them to filter out all the fake and all the things that are not of them and to hone in on who God uniquely created them to be?
It's not a lot different than what I was thinking for our generation.
Okay.
Because I sit down with high school students and get them ready for their college or career interviews. And I ask the question every single time, tell me about yourself. And then we spend some time talking about, like, again, that tells me nothing about you. And they said, well, give me an example. I said, well, I can tell you I'm a mom and that I work as an entrepreneur. Well, for all you know, I could be a great mom or I could be on speed dial from CPS. Like, you don't know. Now, side note, Braxton is doing fine and thriving. But also, as an entrepreneur, like, great, you're an entrepreneur, and that sounds awesome. But you don't know whether I started a company and it's booming and it's doing great, or did I inherit my uncle's failing llama farm and I'm about to take into bankruptcy? Like, it really needs to be more about who we are. So talking with about what motivates you, who inspires you. It's a question every morning. When you're picking out something to wear, are you picking it out because you like it and you feel good in it, or it's because what you're seeing everybody else wear? That's a big, especially when we're talking about like getting ready for these formals. I talk to girls all the time that are wearing like really, really, really short skirts.
1940s swimsuits?
Yes, so much. And I asked actually a group of them, I said, are you wearing that because you feel comfortable, or that's because what everybody else is wearing? And 8 out of those 10 girls said, well, it's because it's what everybody else is wearing. I'm like, so you're uncomfortable. Well, yeah, like it's not like we're pulling it down all night. I'm like, well, then why? Why do it? But they haven't found that confidence or what they want to do to be themselves. Like, they're afraid of being bullied. They're afraid of being excluded, which we all are. So there's further studies that went on. So there's a study by Cameron and Gringer that really looked at self-esteem. And they show that those with significantly higher levels of pro-social behavior, good social behavior, and inclusive decision-making are those that have a higher sense of self, meaning they know who they are. They show more confidence. And when you have that clear sense of identity, you have greater empathy for others, and you're lower in your defensiveness, meaning you're not always thinking the world is out to get you, or that you always have to be explaining who you are. And that self-concept clarity is stronger, and it reduces the social comparison. Like, I'm fine and love who I am. I love who God created me to be. Therefore, I don't need to try to compare myself to others, but I do want the best for them. And you start accepting others. So then in 2020, Child Psychiatry and Human Development, they started looking into this further, and they were really focused on bullying. And what they found is the biggest driver of being a bully is that, which we all know, you're insecure, you have low self-worth, and you have a need for dominance, because that all masks your internal deficits, because you don't feel like you're good enough. You don't feel like you really fit in. But therefore, in order to mask that, you exhibit all those other things. That same social identity theory shows that those that don't know who they are, or maybe think that they don't measure up or they're not perfect, are much more likely to exclude others, because differences feel very threatening to them. And they don't like that feeling. What is interesting when you start tying the teen generation right now to that older generation that we're in, Harvard brought them all together. It's called Making Caring Common. It's a project. And teens who feel insecure or unsupported at home are 3 times more likely to form very exclusive social groups, which we know that those exist even right here in small town South Dakota. Those exist. The link is A, they don't feel supported at home in who they are, but they also see their adult parents doing the same thing, forming very exclusive social groups.
This episode of The Encourager is brought to you by Rebecca Scott Designs, where we make custom purses and accessories designed by you for the life you actually live. From fabrics and linings to leathers and 20 plus styles, every detail is your choice. Each piece is handmade right here in South Dakota, where we believe beauty and function should go hand in hand. Visit designyourownbag.com to create your own custom bag and use code ENCOURAGER for $10 off your purchase. Okay, that is super interesting, Ellie, though, about the seeing their parents' exclusivity as well. And I think it's a part of human nature. It doesn't make it right, but it is a part of human nature to attract people that are similar and that don't look different. And then to also call it out when we're like, what does she think she's doing? Like, we've all experienced that too.
Our kids are not just watching social media. We think they're always there, but they're really watching and modeling our behavior as well.
Yep, absolutely. Which means we can change it.
Absolutely can.
We can be an influence in our children, which also I think as mothers, we tend to be so in tuned, or at least we try really hard, right? To our child's needs. You know, from when they're itty bitty, we know when they roll over in their crib. Like, you know, that's how attuned. And so if you can put words to articulating for your children what you see in them and who God uniquely created them, start now. Hey, I super liked your problem solving there. Like, I have one child that is a logistics queen. She's a problem solving queen. And so I try to remind her of that all the time because it's outside of her beauty. It's outside of anything else. It's just like, man, I super appreciate your problem solving skills. That has been something you've been good at since you were little, or just, it's going to be different for all of us. But man, I hope you guys use our Instagram this week and tell us about the unique qualities of your children, because when we can call those out, we can get ideas for our own children and go, wait, actually, I've never been able to articulate it, but that is true of my child as well. They are good at logistics, which by the way, everybody needs one of those kiddos. It's refreshing. Or they're very, I have one that's really, really attuned to people's feelings. And so it's very hard. It's very hard to wish this child good night because she will be like, Mom, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine, honey. Good night. She's like, nope. She will just say, you know, like, your face doesn't say that.
Sense of empathy. It's like she feels it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's not of me. That's not of Nick. That's of God. That's how he uniquely created her. So just work on helping your child find that individual identity and reinforcing this is a special skill set for you. So when they show up in life, in marriages, in relationships, and for jobs, they can say, hey, this is something I've been very good at.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's interesting to me is, like, you do all the studies, but it really gets down to not only who God created us to be, but how he created us, because the inner workings of the body are fascinating.
Yes.
And so when we talk about this feeling of loneliness or feeling excluded, our brain actually registers it as pain. The anterior cingulate cortex, it lights up. That lights up whether I break a bone, get physically hurt, or I'm emotionally hurt. To that point in our brain, pain is pain. Emotional or physical, it's pain. That's all it knows. So then when we ruminate on that excluded feeling, or we stay on social media and just keep going down and down and down, what we're doing is we're wiring that cingulate cortex to almost be more wired to stress and loneliness. It actually produces more cortisol, which we know leads to not just weight gain, but anxiety and irritability and sadness. And so we just keep plugging into that cortex and lighting it up. Even though nobody's kicking me or hitting me, they are physically hurting me, whether we even realize that it's probably just something on social media. So it's not even somebody sitting right next to us. So it's not necessarily a weakness. It's just biology.
Holy cow, I had no idea.
But there is an antidote. So God created like the way out, right? So our entire chemical system is actually designed for happiness, confidence, and connection if we shift those inner thoughts to actually looking outside. So, and that's hard for a kid, right? Our world is us, but that if we can really get them to look outward. So when we start including somebody, encouraging, serving, celebrating, our brain starts to release serotonin, which we know is a mood stabilizer and helps us feel calmer and more confident. Oxytocin, which is that connection hormone that helps increase trust and relational bonds. And we can actually start to figure out reality versus not with that oxytocin. So that ventral striatum activation point in our brain, when we start to contribute to others or we start encouraging others, it lights up. And it's our brain's way of saying, yes, This is what you were made for. You weren't wired for isolation or designed to obsess over yourself. We were wired to serve, include, uplift, encourage, connect. And it's really our brain rewarding us for doing that. It pulls us out of the doom. So we just have to be aware of God created us to be happy, but not for ourselves, but we're happy because we're pouring into others, which is not what we maybe always think about, but that's actually how we activate happiness.
Oh man, I think it's so true. I have a sign in the back of my studio right now that says, when you give joy, you receive joy. And it was a quote I had in probably like one of my first 5 episodes of the podcast, not fully understanding at the time, but I find it to be so true every single time I get done recording a podcast with you. I'm like a football player who just scored a touchdown. I just think it's so awesome because I know that it's going to encourage other women out there. So it's like this total like victory thing. And it's my brain reacting to who I know at my very core was created to be, is to be an encourager. But even if that wasn't part of the original makeup, which I know it was, I mean, I've practiced it so much that it comes naturally for my body to respond like, whoa, this was amazing. This was fun. And we've had those. And so if you have time to reflect, think about those times when you have lit up after something. What were you doing? Were you encouraging? Were you serving? Were you gifting? What was it that was like, ooh, that feels good? And then again, like the rewiring, the little tiny bit that I know about it, you have to practice it over and over to change the pathways. Is that what you would call it?
Well, yeah, you actually start rewiring the brain and kind of how it works. Right. Right. So I think, when we felt left out or you're feeling lonely, you feel excluded, you get invited to the party with all the kids that, you want, whatever it might be, or you're not invited to be part of the dodgeball team that always makes you feel left out, whatever it is. The natural reaction is, you know what, I just want to go hide in my room and doom scroll, right? I want to hide away, which is what the devil wants. Like he wants to pull us out of things. But actually the way out of that loneliness, the way out of that feeling is to include people, encourage people, serve people. And that's what's rewiring our brains for resilience and joy. Let's be honest, if we have resilience, we can then face some of that. Like we don't get so personally afflicted when we're not invited or included, realizing God didn't want it, right? Like God is protecting you for whatever reason that may be. And that consistent outpouring of ourselves to others creates a dominant and overwhelming natural response in our brain in connecting in who we were created to be. And I look at that even with Braxton, like I need to be more intentional about, like, you can tell when your kids come home and the footsteps are a little bit heavier or the head hangs a little bit lower. It's, ooh, you know what? We're going to be intentional. We're going to go, I don't know, serve somewhere. We're going to, can you choose one of your friends and just tell them what you liked about them today? And it does. It can really start to change it on a dime.
Yes. I think there's a lot of messaging from the world that we can't serve until we feel complete, or we can't go out there until I've got everything put together, or I just need to process this, which is true. I have no doubt that there's processing that's got to be involved, but it doesn't have to be done in isolation. And that would be exactly what Satan wants us, for us to isolate and make ourselves full before we go and serve. And Jesus never, ever did that. He did go away on the mountain for a little bit to collect himself or whatever, but they came to get him. They're like, hey, so sorry, but there's like 300 people waiting for you. And you know what he did? He got up. He got up and he went and he served. And so while I don't want us to take the message away from here, like you got to do it to oblivion until you're ransacked and all that, that's not what I'm saying. But you can serve and start to rewire that long before the world tells you to just like, wait, take a break, make sure that you yourself are everything that you need to be before you go and serve. No, I just don't think that is the case.
Well, and just like how you started at the beginning, those that are more authentically them, they're more transparent about what they've struggled through or what they're struggling through currently, are so much more real, and we're not used to real, and it's easier to connect with. And we are more encouraged to be ourselves around those people. I've been asked by a couple adults, like, well, how do I help my teens through this? Or how do I assess like where they're at? And I think the first thing is, do you know where you're at? Do you know who you are? And therefore, then you can start to then encourage your teens. So you start looking at, do they have a strong sense of who they are? Whether that's us telling them and pointing it out and encouraging their strengths and maybe their uniqueness, things that they're like, ew, I wish I didn't. You're like, no, but this is why. You can evaluate, do they have a higher self-esteem and are they satisfied with life? Or are they always searching for more and do more and be different and constantly changing who they are? That's a pretty good like judgment. And you can see that. You can also see, are they more empathetic and are they more likely to include others, or are they more judgmental? And when they want to invite people, it's just a few and because they're all alike. And do you feel like they're threatened by differences? As well as do you see them comparing themselves constantly to social media and everything? It's like keeping up with the Joneses amplified by a million. So those are some things to look at. The research is very clear. When teens know who they are, what they were created to be, they own their uniqueness, they are less anxious, they're more grounded, they carry themselves with confidence, and they are kinder to other people. It's like a solid identity, emotional armor. It doesn't make life perfect, but it makes them resilient and more understanding of why life is the way that it is.
And notice it's who they were created to be, not do. Sometimes there's an emphasis here in America of like what they were created to do, and that's not what the research says. It's who are you created to be.
Absolutely. That's where, like the old generation, we're all caught up in our roles and that defining who we are. And that's like telling God, like, thanks for getting me the job. And if I lose it, I don't know who I am anymore. Or sadly, like, and we have met people, I've heard speakers with that their kids have passed or they're no longer with them. If you took that in a very raw form, if you lost your job, you lost your kids. I mean, let's talk about Job here. Do you still know who you are? Because if you are only that, there's absolutely, I mean, we're all going to grieve when we're going to go through that stuff. But God is saying, if you're founded firmly on the foundation of who I created you to be, you're my daughter, you're my son, I love you and I made you perfect and I made you for a purpose. No matter what I take from your life or what I add to it should not change who you are.
So one thing that I do with my own girls, and maybe you can speak a little bit to what you're trying with the students and with your son Brax, is like, I just point out to the girls all the time, if they're on Pinterest in particular, we scroll and point out the fakes, which obviously you just told us that we can't even find them at points, but I point them out as frequently as possible. I'm like, oh, that's AI, or oh, that's AI. And then the same thing with like hair and makeup, because I have a lot of daughters. And I'm like, we don't know that that's all of her hair. And that's okay. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying, like, point out, like, to the level you are aspiring to, is that even a realistic level? Like, if you want to look like this gal, let's point out that she's got hair extensions in, lash extensions in. I'm trying to think from a teenager's point of view. She's got a spray tan that is flawless and probably a layer over that. And she's also probably,
her skin has no pores.
Yep. And she has filtered everything out. So like, this is unattainable and it would be exhausting, right? Like, what do you think a better use of our time would be? And then they can come up with tons of things as soon as I say it. So it's just, I think for us personally, that's just what we've been trying to point out, is like, not calling it fake or bad or anything like that. Just be aware though, that this is really tough to live up to if this is going to be the standard.
Absolutely. Another strong question, this came from the Psychology Today study, a question that they would ask the teens when they saw someone they wanted to be like or dress like. They would ask them, why? Why do you want to look like that? Or why do you want to dress, whatever it might be? And interestingly enough, you start seeing some underlying motivators of, well, then I think I'll be liked more by the boys, or I think I'll be part of this group. Okay, why do you want to be part of that group? And then the conversation, they said it would get to the point where a lot of, and I think we've all felt this way, it's exhausting having to act or be someone that you weren't created to be, because you're outputting all this energy and trying to keep up with facade, right? And so these kids that are tired all the time, it's like, and then they're irritable and they're mean to others. It's because you're tired of pretending, and they don't even realize they are. And we do that as adults too. We absolutely do. Something that strikes me, and I mean, I know it's something that you've done, and I ever since that you talked about it, when I talk to kids, it's about looking forward. What do you want to be remembered for? Who do we want people to, like, oh, they had a great job? Well, that's kind of, that doesn't say much, right? But if you were to write your eulogy, or if you were to write what you want on your tombstone now and review that, it's more about the things of inside, who makes you who are, who God made you to be, and review that. And that's a starting point. So now if someone were asked me, if I'm in an interview or if I'm back to that counselor and say, Ellie, tell me about yourself. And I would say, I'm someone who fiercely believes in potential, especially in young people or those that are just entering a workforce. I really want to uncover that potential, which is often greater than they realize it was, and where God had really honed them to be. I'm wired to build things, from teams to ideas to people, furniture, costumes. And I like to ask. I'm very comfortable asking the uncomfortable questions and challenging the norms. That's just who I am, because I want to push things forward. And underneath every title I've ever held, I'm someone who now refuses to let fear choose my future.
Okay, that's going to be one of my 2026 goals, is being able to answer the question, who am I? And some of those I could do, but the fact that you just articulated so many about you in particular, I was like, goals.
But also not something I did overnight, right? Like it took a long time.
It's just going to take a while. Reflection, writing, prayer. Yeah. All of those things that are just important. I have written my obituary. That's something I say frequently. I read it 3 to 5 times a week. I rewrite it every year, but I'm wondering how many sentences in there are about the roles and less about the character. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be evaluating that.
To be careful. Like, I don't want to say the roles are bad. I want to be known as a great mom. Yeah. Okay. That's good
and valid.
But and dig further. What do you mean? Like, why do you? Because I want to know that my child goes out in the life feeling that they know who they are, that he's realizing his potential, right? And above it all, he's grounded in truth. And when he looks back at spending time with mom, it was because I pointed the cross. Like, we have to hone down to more than just the role. Because in my job, I love what I do, but what I love most about my job is coaching others in that potential aspect, or asking the unconventional questions because I want to push the group forward. That's where it's taking the layer back. And that can be hard too, because when we start looking into ourselves, like, ooh, there's going to be things we don't like either, things that we picked up from others. I've also noticed it's one of the things that I believed in myself, or I started becoming, were actually negative influences, which social media is highly negative. We hear that louder, right? And so you need to cut that out. So I am not going to be the one that says your child should only be on social media for however many minutes or at what age. That has to be a parent by parent, child by child decision. But when you start noticing that they're losing the foothold, or they haven't even established the foothold of who God created them to be, that's got to be probably one of the first places you look at, as well as other negative influencers, even ourselves. Like, are we putting too much pressure on our kids in the wrong way? Are we putting it like, hey, we want to be the captain of the team, we want to be valedictorian? And when I tell the high schoolers all the time, great, you could be valedictorian, but I don't know whether you were the valedictorian that would strive for the hard classes to challenge yourself and grow your skills, or are you the type of valedictorian that protected your GPA and took kind of the easy breezy classes? Because that tells me a lot about who you are. The title does not.
Okay, encouragers, here's what you can take away from this is re-listen to it. Listen to especially the brain parts that Ellie was talking about with our own teenagers and with ourselves. Start to create some kind of piece of paper. I picture it like a graph or a circle or a brain dump that you can just hang on your fridge. And maybe you have one for the whole family, or maybe you have one individually. That's just like when you note something in your character or what gives you joy, or you catch yourself humming. It's like, okay, this is who God created me to be, not do, but to be. And write those little words down. And then as it develops over the year, or maybe even the 6 months, you can start really leaning into it. Because when you can find that zone of genius, if you will, the heavens open up and rejoice, like, yes, she's figuring it out. I knew, like, we are, as it says, each one of us uniquely created for his purposes. And so when we can dial that in, the kingdom rejoices. Yeah.
And those quirks that were probably most like, ooh, keep those hidden, the mistakes or the things, we often find that's where God moves most powerfully. That's why he gave us that, right? And so it's like, ooh, I really don't like that. But wait. So I would say it's a very prayerful journey. Like you're saying, jot things down. AI is great. You can ask AI to ask you questions to start undigging. Because this could be a very daunting exercise, but don't rely just on AI. Focus on prayer. Focus on really digging deep. Don't take what I would say is the full easy way out and just have AI do it. But then also ask AI to ask you questions, because those questions are going to be hard for you to answer. Because then you can start having that journey throughout each day of, how would I answer that? Or do I know? Or do I allow myself to? And I point back to writing your obituary, doing the comfort zone exercise. Like, there's a lot of ways, but immediately first thing is figuring out who you were created to be, owning that, and then pouring into others.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Ellie. Until next time, encouragers, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Ready to build systems that actually fit your life and budget? The Encourager Academy is now available one module at a time, each just $39 and only 25 to 35 minutes per video. Choose the area you most need help in, your me, food, home, work, or family system, or dive into the mindset, priorities, and super skills that make all the difference. Each lesson is simple, actionable, and designed to help you create sustainable rhythms that bring peace, not pressure. Visit EncouragerAcademy.com to start your next small step towards harmony and joy. If you've ever wished someone could just sit with you, look at your real life, and help you make progress where it matters most, that's what my one-on-one coaching is all about. For over 10 years, I've coached women to harmonize both home and work life, not by forcing them into a program, but by designing systems that actually fit their personality, their season, and their strengths. No cookie cutters, no overwhelm, just sustainable rhythms that help you finally see traction in the areas that matter most to you. Learn more or book your free discovery call at encourageracademy.com. Let's make progress together.